Greetings, Glitch Gremlins! It's your local Trash Panda Slayer here. I'd like to take you back to the past to talk about a YouTuber who kicks ass. Well, used to at least. The Angry Video Game Nerd. When it comes to the 06 to 2012 golden age of YouTube, I honestly can't think of a YouTuber who was more game-changing and innovative as AVGN. The entire game reviewing scene on YouTube, both good and bad, was practically spawned by him. I'd even say that I was greatly inspired by him as well. Now, as a younger fan of AVGN, I didn't watch him until 2012, in the final year of YouTube's golden age before Gangnam Style, Google Plus, and Vine came in to start the long, painful downward spiral this site's been going through for years now. The first episode I watched was, I think, his review of Action 52. I was immediately hooked by his angry personality and scatological humor, on top of the excellent production values for late 2000s, early 10s YouTube. For years, I proudly considered AVGN to be my favorite YouTube series of all time, but I would be lying to you all if I said I like his recent output. Now, I'm far from the only person to say this, but ever since the late 10s, AVGN's content has been going downhill for a multitude of reasons. A big factor was him partnering with Screenwave and outsourcing the editing and writing, something that's contributed to the fake anger, lazy poop jokes, awful green screen effects, and general out-of-character moments many of the recent episodes have. It's like comparing 90s era Simpsons with what the show is today, or 80s Metallica versus the Load and Reload and Saint Anger era Metallica. If James Rolfe is the Metallica of YouTubers, then his most recent AVGN episode is his Saint Anger. I have already been disappointed by the litany of poorly written and misguided episodes that have come out ever since 2019, but somehow, things got worse. He's suddenly reviewing late 2010s era mobile games now. Like, whatever happened to taking us back to the past? We've got unfunny references to modern technology and some of the most desperate mugging for the camera in AVGN history. And the whole thing just felt soulless and, quite frankly, embarrassing. Alright, I'm adding this in a bit hastily, but while I was editing this video, he dropped another video revisiting the Castlevania series, which I thought was actually quite good and a welcome change of pace, so hopefully that's a sign of good things to come. All that being said, I can still appreciate the Golden Age material just as much as I ever did, which brings me to today's subject, the AVGN video game. More specifically, AVGN 1 and 2 Deluxe, which is 2 games in 1, and more. To be honest, I forgot this game even existed up until recently, despite me buying it shortly after its 2020 release. Yes, the game looked interesting and seemed to be an honest-to-God love letter to the whole AVGN series, but 2020 was during the decline of AVGN's quality, and so I kinda just lost my interest and kept this game on the back burner for a while. But at least once a year, I go through a classic AVGN binge-watching phase, and so this game suddenly piqued my interest. So I'm gonna find out whether this game rocks, or sucks greasy turds out of a hippo's asshole. One slightly irritating thing upon booting up the game was the fact that this thing has Screenwave Media's name attached to it, so every time I boot up the game, I have to be reminded of the company that ruined AVGN. But that doesn't mean the game's gonna be bad. It's like saying Need for Speed Most Wanted is a bad game because evil assholes published it. AVGN, the video game duology, is one part a love letter to the series, with tons and tons of references to classic AVGN moments, and secondly, a scathing satire of the abysmal games AVGN has reviewed. As a fan of satirical humor, I got a lot of laughs out of this. It's like AVGN got teleported into the shitty games that he reviews. Well, actually, that is the literal plot to the first game, done in a satire of the intro to Action 52's Cheetah Man. There's also tons of love letters to good NES games, such as Mega Man, Castlevania, Contra, and Super Mario Bros. It plays and looks like the NES classics that we all know and love, while simultaneously mocking the roughly 90% of NES games that sucked Donkey Kong. But unlike those games that had no checkpoints and only a handful of lives, you can play this game with infinite lives if you so choose, or crank up that diarrhea dial and play with a live system. Which, given the trial and error nature of this game, would probably be absolute cock and ball torture. And there are also frequent checkpoints as well. I'm playing on normal difficulty, like I do with most games. I don't actually find it too frustrating for the most part, with a few exceptions of the satirical difficulty that falls flat on its face sometimes. Most of the gameplay requires getting a pattern down, and once you learn that, you can breeze through these levels quicker and quicker. There are also collectibles throughout the level that account for completion. I didn't get all of them for this review specifically, since I am not a completionist. I mean, does it look like I commit charity fraud? Funny I say that, because apparently the charity fraud committer was actually included in an update to the second game as a brief cameo. Wish I could take myself back to the past to tell those game devs how much he sucks ass. The second game adds upgrades that you can find in levels that will grant you extra powers, which are all based off of actual Nintendo accessories, such as the Power Glove and Nintendo Zapper. If you are a classic Nintendo fan and an avid AVGN watcher, you are going to love this game for all of the references it has to both of those. It also features some welcomed references to other Cinemassacre works, such as Monster Madness and Board Games. Stuff like that goes to show you how passionate the devs really were. They didn't just make a few lazy levels based off of famous AVGN episodes. There are so many references and love letters to things that many AVGN watchers don't even know about, and that is something that I respect. I really love the atmosphere and vibe it gives off, and like I said, this game is straight up hilarious, and any game that makes me laugh is gonna get positive feedback from me. We also have some unlockable characters, such as the skeleton of the Guitar Guy, Bullshit Man, and Mike Matei, which I think are neat additions and all have their own gameplay advantages. And we even have the Glitch Gremlin and Super Mecha Death Christ as special attacks, both of which get a chuckle out of me every time I use them. Like I said, this game is a love letter and a satire of the NES era, and AVGN as a whole, and that is reflected perfectly in the levels. The second game actually starts us off in a recreation of the Nerd Room itself, which is honestly pretty awesome. Every level is an amalgamation of the various games the nerd has reviewed. Some highlights would include a sewer level with doo-doo feces everywhere, with the brilliant name Dookie Dookie Panic, a reference to Super Mario Bros. Doki Doki Panic. This very Japanese level with Godzilla in the background where we can ride a tanuki with huge balls. Nice. There's one level based off of the Atari porn games that I honestly don't think YouTube will let me show without censoring it to hell, which sucks. And a Christmas-themed level featuring reindeer shitting. So yeah, this game is the one place you can see Rudolph taking a shit, outside of E621 and for Affinity, that is. And the boss battles are amazing too, many of which you'll recognize from various AVGN episodes, such as the Where Did You Learn to Fly lady, General Custer, who attacks you by jizzing, really, and Fred Fucks. Granted, this one is based off of his infamous portrayal by the late Gilbert Gottfried, but he's handled much better than in that Life of Black Tiger video. One of the worst AVGN videos, but not the worst. For completing both games, you also get a secret chapter, which ends with us having to fight totally not Bugs Bunny. With 2 sections, make that 3 sections, with a brilliant tribute to Mortal Kombat at the end. Seriously, this game is fucking awesome. And can I just mention that this game's soundtrack is seriously better than it has any right to be? Just take a listen to these sick jams. In fact, better than it has any right to be is the best way to describe this game. It's genuinely a good retro-styled platformer with a lot of fan service. They could have just phoned it in and made a shitty LJN-styled tie-in game, but they went above and beyond and made a game that no AVGN fan should miss out on. Hell, I can even recommend it to non-fans of the show, since at heart, it's just a great indie 8-bit platformer, and one of the funniest games I've played in recent memory. If you just want a fun and hilarious indie game to bash through over the weekend, then this right here is a game worth buying.